welcome back to our recovery talks and our panel discussion. We're so thrilled to have you here this evening. We have our lovely co-founders of Myrina Foundation, Jale and Lee, and we have such a special guest joining us all the way from Istanbul, Emre. Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited to delve into our topic tonight. We're going to talk about denial. And when did each of you, I kind of want to talk about your stories in recovery with each of you in regards to when did you realize that you were in denial? When did your addiction become out of control, or when did you realize that it was out of control and that you needed help? So I just kind of want to touch a little bit on that topic, and then we'll kind of free flow it and see where the conversation goes. That sound good, guys?
Yeah, of course.
Well, let's start with Jale. Jale, tell us a little bit about kind of your recovery process and what denial looked like in that for you, and how you kind of overcame that or discovered that, and when your substance use or your addictions became out of control for you.
Okay. I started drinking when I was 9. I grew up in a British household, so having a shandy, like, wine or Sprite or beer or Sprite kind of was a normal thing, and at Sunday dinners and shit like that. So when I was like 12, it became a regular thing to keep warm, like I told you, because of my anorexia and because I was a dancer, I couldn't eat, yada yada. And after that, it was just everybody drank, everybody that I knew drank. It was a normal thing in our culture. And I didn't have a problem. I could drink the boys under the table. I was the one who used to dispatch them to their mommy's homes and ring the doorbell and say, oh, he had a bit of too much to drink, miss, yada, yada, yada. So I could handle my drinks, I didn't have a problem. Denial number 1. So later in time, I realized when I got into recovery, that was the biggest bullshit, because if you didn't get drunk, that is an indication that you had a high tolerance and you were about to get effed, right? At a certain point that in your life. And then I just free rolled with it. I could drink a ton. I mean, I used to smoke like a chimney and I could drink like a ton, okay? I don't remember actually a week between being 14 and 25 that I was fully sober. It wasn't there. When I was in my 20s is when withdrawals started happening, and I had to drink. That became, I had to do it. And my withdrawals were so severe, like my hands used to shake like this, and like I couldn't breathe really easy, etc., etc. And some of my friends thought that I was using heroin, and I'm like, what? No, I'm just like drinking, right? And they didn't believe me. So I, in the end, gave up and I said, look, I might have a problem, okay? I'm not denying it. I might be an alcoholic, but I really don't have the urge to do anything about it right now. So get off of my back, okay? So my denial was that even if I was an alcoholic, I could control it. 5 years down the line, when the TV started talking to me, when a guy broke into my house and burglarized everything, and I was passed out in the couch, and the poor schmuck thought that, oh my God, poor girl, I'm not going to even touch that, because I was in such a bad shape, right? I was constantly puking bile. And I burnt the soles of my feet just to go out there and buy a bottle of ABC for myself. I ran out of the house barefooted in a very hot day. I burnt the soles of my feet on the asphalt. I didn't even feel it, right? And at that moment, I was still denying it, that I could actually, how do you say, control it. It was when somebody I really cared a lot passed away, and that somebody told me if I carried on like this, that I was going to end up in a very bad place. And I laughed at that somebody at the time. I even was a smug little shit to him, saying, oh, nothing happened to you. You drank for about 40 years. I'm just young. Nothing will happen to me. Right? When I heard that he passed away, I realized that there was something seriously wrong here. Right? You know, because to normal people, the TV didn't speak to them. Right? And I went back home. There was no denying it. I asked for help, etc., etc. I got into DTs. At that point, I was really afraid of being stuck in the DTs. Like dinosaurs were rolling all over the place. My hamburger was flying. I had to, like, you know, try to catch it to eat the bloody thing. I wanted to take a shower. I took a blood bath. My father had to break the door. I mean, it was like there was no denying it at that point, right? When I come to think of it now, like nearly 30 years later, I'm like, I think denial is one of the worst things that we could do to ourselves, right? Because it actually hurts us so badly for picking up our lives and putting it on track again. But again, I honor it because it's a way to keep sane in the madness that we live in, right? None of us self-medicated because our lives were nice and rosy, right? We did it for a reason. And denying that reason might be one of the things also. Like, I denied why I was drinking because drinking was fun to me. I can accept being an alcoholic, but I denied the other shit, if that makes sense, you know? So I think denial never stops. Even in late recovery, as I am today, I still catch myself denying some of the things that are actually bugging me or hurting me. And if I don't catch them, they can become toxic. And once they get toxic, I will do anything to find a way to self-medicate myself. You know? So I think that this is, I think, one of the most crucial things in an addict's life before recovery and during recovery. I don't know what you guys think, but, you know, knowing is my best tool to stay in recovery. Because when I stop realizing and knowing, then it becomes really dodgy. It really becomes dodgy.
And I think you're 100% right. I think the more, and I don't know if anyone else has ever experienced this, but at times of relapse for me, it was 100% around denial. It was me convincing myself that I could drink like a normal person or that I could control it, even after many, many, many incidences that would have screamed otherwise, right? Lee, what did that look like for you?
Oh, so denial for me. So for me, when I got into recovery from sports. I was already a counselor. And so I already knew what denial was, right? Because denial is a normal coping mechanism, okay? It is. But it's a normal coping mechanism for a situation that is outside the norm, okay? Your brain creates a situation of denial in a really extreme situation so that you can experience a little bit of it at a time and be able to cope with a little bit of it at a time because it's an extreme situation. Okay.
Yeah.
And so by the time I started to get into recovery, I knew that. I already had the education to know that. And so my denial, so I used to smoke just like Jale and like everybody here, I think. I used to smoke. And when my denial really kicked me in the ass was when I stopped smoking the first time. Because when I stopped smoking the first one day, I was running late for work. Okay. And I was like, oh shit, gotta get dressed, get out, get into the car, drive to work. And it's like everything was an emergency and it had to happen right now so that I wouldn't be late to work. And I got to work and I hadn't smoked yet. And I go, hey, I haven't smoked yet today. I wonder what it'd be like to go until noon. So I just didn't smoke until noon. Not because I wanted to stop smoking, but because I was like, oh, I wonder what this would be like. Right? So I didn't smoke for 9 months.
Wow.
I didn't smoke for 9 months. And it was like really easy to not do because I did it. Literally, I did it by accident. I didn't do it with any intention. And I didn't think about it. I never thought about it at all for 9 months. Okay. And then I went out drinking one night. And when I got up in the morning, I had half a pack of cigarettes sitting beside the bed. And I'm like, well, how the fuck did that happen? And I had this thought. I remember this thought because this was the first denial thought that I ever had. Okay. I had this thought, well, I haven't been smoking all this time. I'll finish smoking that pack of cigarettes because I bought it and then I won't buy any more. And then later on in the day, I'm like, I'll buy one more pack of cigarettes. And that's like literally this
Yeah.
is the first time that denial has become a thing for me, right? Because I never
Larry,
experienced it before. But the next thing you know, I'm like full on. I'm like totally like within 48 hours, I was up to a pack of cigarettes a day and like full bore. Like everything that I do, I have to have a break. And it's like if I'm gonna go and do this, I have to have a break. But the one thing that I did that was totally different is I absolutely refused to smoke indoors. I would not smoke indoors at all. And so finally, like 20 years later, I finally decide, okay, I'm going to stop smoking.
You said 20 years later?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So 20 years later, I decide I'm going to stop smoking. And so here's how I did that. Every time that I walked to the balcony, I had no reason to go there except one. And I would like, and I'd turn around and walk the other way. And the first time I did that, Jale's dad almost jumped out of his skin.
Startled
And
him.
yeah, I scared the hell out of him. And he was like, oh, what happened? And I was like, I was going to go outside and smoke. And I said I wasn't going to do that. So I'm going to do something else. And I would have to go and do something else. Right. And it's like I had to work my way through this time and do it with intention because the last time it was so easy. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe that. But that was the first time that I had that thought. Oh, I can finish this pack of cigarettes. And it's like, no, you can't. I mean, yes, you can. You can finish that pack of cigarettes. You can finish that bottle, you know, but the time to stop is now.
Yeah.
Right? The time to correct is now, period.
Yeah.
And even now, like I eat too much. Even now with food, it's like I still do it now with food. I'm like, oh, if I eat this package of cookies, they'll be okay. I won't get another package of cookies. You know, if I eat this bag, I'll eat a small bag of chips. I won't eat a big bag of chips. And then Shelly and
The
Achille go to the
worst.
store and they buy family-sized bags of chips, and I treat them like they're little bags. So I mean, that's my ordeal with denial is that, oh, I'll do it this time, but I won't do it that time. It's like, yes, you will. Stop it.
Bree, what
There.
about you? What is
Uh,
what
it-
what did denial look like for you, and what does it present for issues today? And when did you realize that your cannabis use was out of control for you?
So it was like a tough call for me to realize that I was in a denial, and it wasn't that easy. And before telling this story, I had to just want to reverse it a little bit back. So I've always thought with alcohol or with consumption, I always thought like I was in the control till I wasn't. And at some point, I first started smoking like once a month or something, and it then become more regular. I started to smoke every week, then every day. At one point, I felt like, okay, maybe I'm not doing so good that I thought I do. Uh, and the reason I was smoking was mostly for all the responsibilities that I have, and with having all of those, I had to be functional. So it was just like a tool for me. And at some point, I stopped smoking. And after like 6 months later, it was Happy New Year's year. We was having a party at our friend's house. And I said, well, it's just Happy New Year, like New Year. So it just happens once. And I will smoke tonight with my friends, have fun, and enjoy the evening. And then I won't like smoke again, like Lee told. So, but that wasn't the case either. So, yeah.
And
So
I think we're
I
all
start,
laughing because it's such a familiar feeling, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
we
yeah,
can
Yeah.
all
yeah.
really relate to each
It's
other.
so classic. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And after a while, uh, like after the relapse I had, I think I smoked for another year as well. And one day, the wake up call that I had was that all I had was being in denial. My psychiatrist said, well, Emre, you are in psychosis, and if this is keep going like this, it won't end well for you. So maybe you should just start thinking about quitting it and open a new chapter on your life. So uh, probably that was the biggest wake-up call that I ever had. So uh, being in psychosis, being not be able to think about it clearly, etc. It was just made me so sad, I guess. I don't know. Uh, and at that point, probably the day I woke up from being in denial. I don't know.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I think, for me, well, I ran away from foster care when I was 14. And I lived on the streets with the punk rockers. This was the early 80s in Washington, D.C. for about a year and a half. I was AWOL from the child welfare system. I was just gone. And while I spent that time on the streets, I probably did every drug known to man, except for ecstasy, because that had not come out yet, because we're talking many, many years ago. But I dabbled and tried absolutely everything. LSD was my drug of choice, and I liked it. And I was probably tripping 5 out of 7 days a week, right? It was cheap. It took me on great adventures. And back in 1983, when you did LSD, cars stood up and talked to you, and it was a good time, right? But
Is that
fast
where the
forward,
movie came from?
pardon me?
Is that where the movie came from?
Probably, probably. But fast forward, I got bored with that, and I ended up going home and going back to high school. I went to live with my grandmother, and I stopped all drugs. So it wasn't an issue. I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't like it, and I didn't do it. And so by the age of 16, I was clean and sober. And so when I started to get really active in my alcoholic drinking, I had convinced myself that I wasn't an alcoholic, right? Because I can quit, I can walk away from drugs, I can walk away from booze too, right? Not a problem. And I did have periods of sobriety, like I had mentioned, I think in a previous video, you know, we talked about during pregnancies and when my children were super little, you know, just not drinking during those times. But even after I had started to have these realizations that I was a problem drinker, and I had gone and started to attend AA. I can remember sitting in meetings and comparing myself to others. There would be people talking about how they experienced the DTs, right? Well, I didn't experience that, so I must not be an alcoholic. People talked about how their hands shook when they woke up in the morning. Well, I wasn't experiencing that, so I couldn't be an alcoholic until I was. Right. And so like all those things that I had tried to convince myself, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't act like that. I've never been to jail until I was. I've never driven drunk until I did a lot, right? With my kids in the car. I mean, some really shameful stuff, right? And then I started blacking out. And even those mornings I would black out, I would be like, where's my car? How did I get home? Where's my phone? Who the hell is that laying next to me? You know, I mean, just like really bad situations that I put myself in. And still I could control this, right? So just the absolute mind fuck and the stories that we tell ourselves to convince ourselves that we have control over this thing that has absolute utter control over us, right? And so I think for me, I was probably about 4 years sober and a couple relapses in when I realized that if I ever put alcohol in my body, I'm a completely different person, and I'm not responsible for my behaviors, right? I would get drunk and I would start fights with people. I'd have these great big Facebook message wars. I'd text and I'd have to look at my phone in the morning when I woke up to see what I had done, who I had hurt, what I could be expecting for the day, like who's going to scream at me, who's going to disown me, kind of thing. Just really shameful stuff. And now I think today I'm able to recognize when I'm in denial about some things. Even with the smoking, I think it's so funny, Lee, what you were talking about, because there was a time several years ago that I actually left a half a pack of cigarettes sitting on the arm of a chair, and I said, I'm done. And I walked away, and I didn't smoke for 2 years. And goddamn, I picked it up again. And when I tell you every day I'm struggling with it today. I want to quit smoking. And that's my knee jerk when I'm stressed, when, oh, my favorite thing in the world to do is drive my car and smoke a cigarette, right? And it's like, I hate the way it smells. I hate the money I spend on it. I want to quit so bad, but I'm not there. So it continues. I think it's a life thing, right? For all of us, like all these things are going to come up. And I like what you said, Lee, about people having to kind of deal with stressors and triggers in increments, and how denial allows us to do that. So I think there's some aspect of that that can be healthy or self-protective. But I think for people, well, for myself and maybe people like me who struggle with addiction, denial is much more deadly for us than a normal person.
I know that you've heard me talk about addiction being a hijacking of our natural survival systems, right? You've heard me talk about that. And I think Emre is maybe the only person who hasn't heard me talk about how this is my belief, and I think that this is something that we need to actually study, and do an actual formal study on. Because like even in the rooms they talk about HALT, right? Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If you have one of those things going on, then you have a decent chance that you're going to relapse. If you got two going on, then you got a really good chance that you're going to have a relapse. If you got three going on, you better look out, right? So if you look at those things, hungry, angry, lonely, and tired, what are those? Those are our 4 survival mechanisms. Hungry, we need food and water. We need it. Angry, emotional stability in our lives, right? Our emotional regulation. Lonely, our connectivity with another human being. Tired, we need rest or we're going to die. These are the 4 survival mechanisms, okay? And it's like when I see that in all of the talking to recovering addicts that I've done, okay, I've always asked them the question, so when you are about to relapse and you're about to relapse, what does that feel like to you? For me, when I was smoking, okay, I felt like I couldn't breathe. And the only way that I could breathe was to smoke, okay? Because my body was telling me it needs smoking instead of air. And with all of the alcoholics, every single alcoholic that I asked that question, every single one of them said, I'm thirsty. And if I drink water, it doesn't do it. The only way for me to feel not thirsty is for me to drink alcohol. And when like codependence, you ask them, so like, why do you keep going back to this person? Well, I'm lonely. It's the only person that I can connect with, right? This is where the denial mechanism actually comes into this too, is because denial is a normal process. So like if your child dies, right? You can't deal with that. You can't, okay? You have to cope with that a little bit at a time, and denial will allow you to do it. And all of your friends, they instinctively know what's going on, okay? And they will not fight you when you set that place at the table for that child. They won't say, that child isn't coming to the table, darling. You're going to have to pick up that plate. They let you leave that plate on that table. When it comes to, I'm going to make their bed, nobody's going to stop you from making their bed. Nobody's going to stop you from changing their linens in their room. Nobody's going to stop you from cleaning their bathroom. Nobody is going to stop you from doing all of those things because they know that you're using this to deal with that little bit that you can deal with today. Right? And so it's a survival mechanism for us, and we need to have it, but we can hijack it, right, to justify doing a whole lot of really terrible shit, like damaging ourselves in horrible ways. We can use the normal survival mechanism to do it. I took over, sorry.
Well, it's a lifesaver, and it's also an enabler. The issue of denial, right?
Yeah.
It depends on when or why you use it. Like the child example that you give. Maybe for a while that would be a healthy way to deal with that. Okay. It can be justified.
It's temporary. It happens only for a little while.
Yeah. But for me, as being an alcoholic, I'm glad that I didn't let it become an enabling tool after I was 20 years old. Like, I always said, yeah, I might be an alcoholic. You're right, but I don't have any intentions of doing anything about it right now. Just like what you said about your smoking. I think our saving grace for being in long-term recovery is we do realize we do have a problem and we don't let denial enable us, okay? And I think that's a very powerful thing to do, right? I mean, accepting that you do have a problem and choosing not to do anything about it is actually healthy. At least you know what you're facing. You know what the consequences can be. And one day you will do something about it, right? I
Kind
mean,
of like being responsible about your irresponsibility.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm choosing to be irresponsible, right? I'm choosing to wake up in the morning on top of a bloody tree with a 30 feet cliff underneath.
I've seen this tree, by the way.
How in the world?
I've seen the mystical tree branch that she's talking
Okay.
about.
I blacked out on a tree branch, hugging the tree branch with a 30 feet cliff underneath me.
Not 30 feet. It's not 30 feet.
What was it?
It's 150 feet to the top of the building.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, I woke up in the morning looking down and I'm like, what? I mean, it's a choice. Okay. I choose to like that, right? It's a choice. I know I have a problem and I'm choosing to like that till I can't choose that anymore. Okay. I think whoever wants to get into recovery about whatever, codependency, overeating, nicotine, gambling, sports, sex, whatever, right? I think if we really want to help someone, okay, don't enable them and don't let their denial enable them. I mean, we could be actually very honest with them and say, I understand, you could be this, but you're not choosing to do anything about it. And I respect that. Once you give that power, telling that person that I respect you for choosing not to do anything about it, and then tell them if it's a loved one, I'm choosing not to get affected by your addiction, okay? But I'm not going to enable you either. So, be very truthful about it, right? Can actually save someone's life. I mean, we're not lying to ourselves and we're not lying to them, right? And we're not letting them lie to themselves either. So I think when we talk about honesty in recovery, we need to be honest to ourselves also, that we can't control anyone. We can't control anyone's addictions. We always try to enable them because we love them. We don't want them to suffer, right? And we don't want them to hurt. Oh, well, it doesn't work that way. If they need to hurt, they're going to hurt. If we need to leave them, we got to leave them. If we need to close that door to their faces and say, come back to me when you actually make a choice, okay? We have to do that. And that's another denial, because even when we're in recovery, we can deny our loved ones' problems, okay? Like I could tell Lee, I mean, everybody knows that we're married now, so I could tell Lee, oh, your eating isn't a problem, my dear baby. I'll bake you another cookie, because I don't want him to hurt.
Keep buying me chips.
Yummy.
So happy, right? I mean, denial is not only the active addict's problem. Denial is actually the family problem. Denial is actually a social problem. Somebody goes to an Ivy League school. Oh, wow. They hold a high-level job. They show everybody that they're actually a responsible person. They could still do that but they drink in their car, but they drink in the bathroom, or, you know, they do A, B, C, D. And because we don't confront them on what they're doing, like hurting themselves, we're actually feeding their disease. When we say, oh, he can't do that because he went to a good school, he holds a good position, he earns a lot of money, he can't be a problem. No, it just doesn't work that way. It's not only the homeless guy. How do you know that homeless guy wasn't a very successful person before he became homeless? You know? So I don't know, this denial business, like, I think we should look at it not only from our perspective in recovery, but our loved ones' perspective, you know, or our children or people that we care for, that we interact with, you know.
So one, and I think this is probably getting close to where we ought to wrap stuff up, but one of the things that I think we ought to talk about is, and I don't know, maybe you guys can cut this out if you want to. How many relapses are facilitated by family members who are in denial themselves?
Oh yeah. Oh
You
yeah.
know, it's like,
Oh,
codependent family members who, I can't cope with you being so honest with me about what's happening. I can't cope with, I can't deal with the fact that you're actually addressing my part of the behaviors, and I would rather have you check out. Here,
go
have
drink.
that.
You were a better person when you were using.
I can't cope with you being sober.
Yeah, I've
By the
seen,
way,
I've seen
this
that.
is
I've
what I'm
witnessed that.
drinking, everybody.
What are you?
When
No,
you see me do this, it's really, this is what it is, okay?
I read a quote once, and I don't know who said it, but it was something along the lines of, someone who is in denial about themselves can never be honest with anyone. So we talked a little bit about that honesty, and I would really like for us to do recovery talk specifically around that. What does honesty look like, right? And I can tell you, when I was drinking alcoholically, I was the most diabolical, dishonest, manipulative person on the planet, right? So I stopped drinking. That doesn't mean I'm not still diabolical and manipulative, because that's what I knew. That was my survival mechanism, right? Manipulate people, get them to feel sorry for me, and then they'll take care of me. That stems from way back in childhood. But part of my recovery process was getting honest with myself and other people. And the getting honest with myself and recognizing the denial, I may not be able to fix it or change it or do anything about it at that moment. But Jalia, I liked what you said about being able to recognize it. Okay, I'm in denial. This is how my body and my mind and my soul is coping, and I need to address this, right? And then that extending that honesty to others. And I think that comes along too, in that talk about our family members may not like it when we're honest. They're not ready to pull back those layers. So I think we can have a whole panel discussion on that. And I think that would be maybe what we can focus on for our next discussion, because I think it would be really helpful for people out there that are currently going through that.
I totally agree.
Yeah, so like we can focus on honesty and Jesus, how do you put it? Honesty with our family members, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, being honest with ourselves and then being honest with the people around us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how they may or may not be prepared for that.
And then how do we deal with that if they're not? Because that can feel like a form of rejection, right? When we're trying so hard and we're working so hard, but some of our family members or our friends are still pissed at us, right? And they're like, because of maybe some of our behaviors, or they're not emotionally aware or mature enough to deal with their own honesty issues. And what does that look like? Is that a trigger then for us to go back?
Well, then there's the control stuff too,
Oh yeah.
about the people around us. They've been controlling our lives for probably some time, using the substance as a means of control. And so, it's like that's usually what happens actually when somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, I prefer you to have that on board. Thank you very much."
Yeah.
They're trying to control your life. So, it's like, are you ready to face that? Are you ready to face that you've been in through your denial and your addiction? You've been giving up control of your life to somebody else who's been enabling you to continue being a horse's ass.
Yep. True.
Yeah.
True.
Well, my goodness, this has been such a wonderful conversation. Lee, what are you doing? Lee's playing with his
showing
toys.
everybody a
Lee-
horse's ass.
Very nice. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
We've been redirecting Lee for most of the evening. He's in a very joyful spirit this evening. So, well, I just want to thank everyone for joining us, and I really hope that you enjoyed the content this evening. If anything resonates with you, take what works, leave the rest. But we would love to hear from you. So in our description is all of the ways to contact us, all of the things, our website, which is coming live very soon, email addresses. If you are wanting to share your story with us, for a personal interview for our Conversations on the Couch series, we'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to join our panel discussion, you are more than welcome. Again, we hope to be able to have these panel discussions at some point live so we can open for Q&A. And if you're curious about Myrina Foundation, please check out all the things, our social media, our website for any information, and definitely get in touch. So I want to thank each and every one of you for being here this evening, especially Emery. I know it's very, very early where you are, and you woke up super early to join us today, and we're so grateful. And I just look forward to seeing everybody with many, many more topics that we plan to cover. And if you have any ideas or anything that you, as our audience, would like to see covered or talked about, give us some suggestions. We're open. We're here for you. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely evening.